Hi, good evening. And in this quick video, I'm actually going to answer the question. It was nice of somebody to ask me, but they sent me an email and said, look, really they're impressed by the kit that they bought. So they bought a Sensi All instrument off us. Just out of interest, the Sensi All instruments in front of me now. I will be demonstrating this very shortly. And the Sensi All is both a potentiostat and also a way of turning assays into products really quickly, and that's something I'm going to be discussing very shortly. So, without a little more said, let me jump into it now and answer their questions. So, just to kind of say, this won't be just talk; there'll also be a demonstration as well. But I appreciate the comment; it's a nice comment, so thank you so much. And they wanted to just get some insights in, and when I looked at the question, I did analyze the question. There's both the development, implementation of biosensors. So you've got kind of when implementation, you've got research and development, and implementation. I would suggest could mean actually the commercialization of said biosensors. I think that people spend too much time developing and not enough time implementing, and I'll try and sort of give some opinions and some case studies around that. So they did ask me, did I know any successes or failures in this field? So I'm assuming when they say in this field that we're really thinking about point of care diagnostics, and so it's really funny. There are successes, but actually the success rate in any company is actually 5%, I would, and less actually. So finding successes is much harder than finding failures. It's actually quite easy to find failures. I think within 2 years, probably 90% of companies, and not probably, I've seen the statistics, 90% of companies, are already gone. Within 5 years, only 5% of companies are kind of left. So it's very easy to find failure in business. It's very hard to find, even partial success. I will talk about a partial success. In fact, I'll use this as a case study now. There was a company in Norway called SpinChip. This is only partial, by the way, and I'm not criticizing SpinChip. I'm just kind of saying really. They had a point of care diagnostic, so SpinChip chip had a point of care diagnostic. Now, depending on your perspective, so you would say, oh, okay, they actually sold themselves to bioMérieux. I think it was about 111 million. I think they previously partially sold themselves to bioMérieux, but there was another cash exchange for about 111 million. And it sounds like a really good amount of money. And I'm not criticizing. I don't directly know the CEO, but they're kind of near neighbours of us. But that was over 10 years. So the company's been around for about 10 years. In fact, ZP's in its 11th year. So I'm not criticizing selling a business for 111 million, but you do understand that there'll be a lot of people involved in that, let's say, exit. So that 111 million will be shared out quite a few people. And it took 10 years. So that's a partial success, I would say. And as I say, they sold themselves to bioMérieux, and I wish them good luck. Now, again, I'm not finding. I don't want to, this is their words, failure stories. But we recently had. I'm going to mispronounce this, but there was a company that was making an AI sort of wearable technology. I think they were looking to replace phones. There were a couple of executives out of Apple, and they raised hundreds of millions, and the company just kind of got closed up, and the IP just got sold to Hewlett Packard. Because in the end, I think what it was is they raised a lot, they sold not much, and the reviews they had on what they sold weren't very high, and there they kind of failed. I've got a bit of a thing to kind of say that in life, I actually think if you're going to do a company, fail fast, and preferably fail cheaply. What I mean by that, I don't really want you to fail, so I don't mean fail fast. I actually mean succeed or show some success, fairly quickly. 10 years is quite a lot of time to promote or give your life to, and it not to necessarily be successful. I've known companies that have run for 15 years and they went into liquidation at the end of 15 years. So be very careful, because You really want to put your energy into something that's going to be successful. Understanding that a company's not succeeding is a really important skill set, and people just keep on going and going and going. I'll get a bit more specific in a minute, but fail fast is one of my mottos. I also mean succeed quickly. You know, I'd also say that government funding is something you've got to watch out for, because government funding is set up wrong. Government funding is actually, in part, the government has a kind of metric. They say, if we put a certain amount of money into a company, that company will, or so they do grants, etc. That company will get employees. It will get extra investment, and it will hire people. So governments are investing and putting money into companies through soft funding. What they're really just trying to do is just get people hired. So government funding is set up wrong, because it's not really set up to make you successful. It's set up so to make you hire people. And you've got to really have a clear route to market. Now I'll sort of expand on that, probably that last bit here. So there is something called product market fit. I mean, I used to kind of say, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? And I think product market fit is really kind of asking the same question. What is the market that you're trying to address? Now, to be fair to somebody like Steve Jobs, he didn't ask people, would you like a iPod and then eventually an iPhone? Steve Jobs just had a vision and he went for it. I get it. That is a top-down approach. A bottom-up approach is kind of, which more people follow. By the way, I like both approaches, by the way. It's actually saying, right, is there a market? What's the problem with the market? And does my product actually, or does do the theoretical specifications of my product meet the requirements desired by that particular market? And then I'm going to talk about ideal customer profile. I want to say that if you can't identify and imagine and identify who's generally going to buy this product, please stop. Please stop. Because so many people are so enamored by the idea, but they really can't identify or profile who's actually going to buy this. And I think it's really important to kind of have speed and efficiency of delivery built into it. That's that kind of fail fast, succeed fast kind of thing that I'm sort of super interested in. I mean, I'll give you an example of, from a world that I understand quite well, which is CGM, continuous glucose monitoring, or diabetes in general. People when they're doing business cases for CGM, they go, well, there's a market there. It's diabetes. There's millions of people in diabetes, and they identify. But in some markets, your ideal customer profile is not the diabetic. The diabetic is not actually paying for the product. Now, in the USA, that, for example, it could be the diabetic who's paying for it. But in Europe and maybe, in the UK, where I understand quite well, we've got something called the NHS, the National Health Service. See, if your product is going to be successful by a national body like the NHS buying it, the real customer is the NHS. And when you profile the NHS and you understand the NHS, you will understand that their procurement can be very long, 10 years, 15 years, maybe 20 years. That you're not going to be able to sell to the NHS. So when it says ideal customer profile, it's not necessarily the patient who is your customer. It could be the purchaser at a health insurer, the purchaser at a National Institute for Health, but it may not be the patient that you're otherwise imagining. What else have I got here now? Yeah, and then at ZP, of course, we try to help with people with speed and efficiency by having fairly good technology. No, fairly good. I think they're excellent technologies, but I'm trying to sort of show some modesty to actually help people get to market. So you ask a specific question that, actually spotting successes, especially medical diagnostics, is actually quite hard. I think the attrition rate is actually greater than, I've sort of said that, most 95% of businesses are not around in 5 years' time. I suspect that in medical diagnostics, that's even more so. I kind of added spin chip as a partial success. There was another company just recently called Lumira, They were based in Scotland, and they sold themselves to Roche for like 300 million. But I think they were run out of funding, and they needed to sell themselves to Roche, and I'm not sure that the original investors would have actually got their money back. So sometimes, as businesses are sold and people see these numbers for like 100 million, 300 million, they think, oh, there must be some amazing success there. But actually, people are really genuinely losing money, and sometimes in those particular deals. So no, it is actually quite hard to show success in medical diagnostics. Which may actually make you think about the strategy a little bit. Think about wellness, think about health, think about veterinary a little bit as well. Genuinely, don't think that the patient is actually your customer. The patient may be the beneficiary, but they're not the customer. And you've got to really think about, in fact, in medical diagnostics, you often have to really think of a distributor model where you actually work with local people or local companies in Germany, in the USA, who actually have boots on the ground who can actually go in and sell those products to those doctors, etc. And most people spend too much time developing technology, not working on the business case, spend 15 years doing it, and at the end of it, they're not successful. So please, succeed fast or fail fast. When it comes to, I should have said this, succeed fast, I just want to kind of give you a quick idea. I'm very delighted that this particular person is actually using our technology, and I appreciate that you like it. I'll just give you an example. We knew we had the we knew we had the Sense It All platform. Sorry if I'm just going to lean out of shot slightly. I'm just going to grab something real quick. I wouldn't want you to think that these videos are ever rehearsed. In fact, it's me and the camera. And what I want to do is just demonstrate to you a sort of succeed fast mentality. So at ZP, we do have a very motivated team, and one of the engineers really wanted to kind of get involved in assay development. So he went to one of the other engineers and said, what can we do? They knew that we'd been talking about caffeine for years, but we knew we could do it. But actually, they just did it in their own free time, which is pretty amazing, really. But the reason that they were able to do it in their own free time was because the platform was so powerful. So I'm going to show you succeeding fast. So at Zimmer Peacock, we have the Sense It All platform. It's really a fully functioning potentiostat. It allows us to translate scientific research into products really quickly, and we're a good example because we can do it ourselves, and then we just try to enable other people to do it as well. And with time, we'll get even better at helping other people translate ideas into products. What I'm just going to do is I'm just going to scan this QR code. So I scanned that QR code, which has moved it into a modality where it says caffeine. And what I'll do is I'll take, I always laugh because I'll just put some Red Bull in here. And I realize I need to get some buffer. So give me 1 second while I go and grab some buffer. Which I have grabbed, and I do like the spontaneity of this. So I've got some buffer here. So this product has this element to it as well, where we made some buffer. And I'll probably talk about actually the bits that we had to develop and the bits that we didn't have to develop. So the buffer we did develop, but to be honest with you, developing a buffer, not that hard. And what I'll do is I've got a little vial here. So I want to I'm using this to kind of tell you a little story about a couple of engineers used a little bit of their spare time at ZP to develop an assay for measuring the caffeine in drinks. So I'll just grab 100 microliters of Red Bull, and I'm just going to grab 100 microliters of buffer, which I am doing. They go together. And I will shake up like this, just really quickly. So those two things have been shaken together. Now what I'm going to do is, you'll often, if you watch videos from me, often hear me talking about 50 microliters. 50 microliters is not some magic number, by the way. It's just, it covers our sensors quite nicely, our screen printed electrodes quite nicely. So I'm just going to take 50 microliters like this. I will just going to name the, I'll go into the app. I will call this Red Bull, which I've done. Back, continue. I'll just put 50 microliters onto there. Right, and I will go start measurement, and the assay is running. Now, why am I doing all of this? Because I'm doing all of this because I'm trying to say, there's always been a philosophy at Zimmer Peacock, fail fast. I think it originally may have even come from somewhere like MIT, but I certainly think it's been, sometimes it gets wrapped up in something called an MVP, a minimum viable product concept, which is a sort of Silicon Valley tech concept. I've just got the world's most perfect answer, by the way. This is verifiable. In Red Bull, they say that their caffeine content is 0.03%, which translates as milligrams to gram of 0.3. We go to the second decimal point, 0.32. So absolutely perfect answer for how much. Sorry, that's gone slightly blurry, but that's a perfect answer for how much caffeine is in Red Bull. And now we have an assay, and it's an assay that we can sell. So we went from idea to product very quickly. But how did we manage that? Well, we consume our own electrodes, and this person has bought some electrodes off us, so they've got some very repeatable electrodes. They've got the SensiAll platform. So in reality, all we had to develop was the assay and the buffer. And then you start to take it out there and sell it. And if people don't want to buy it, then you fail. But you fail fast, as opposed to, let's spend 15 years building this assay, and at the end of it, people are saying, oh, well, if you did this, then I'd buy it. No, when people say, if you did this, then I would buy it, what they're really saying to you is, no, actually, I don't want it. And you've got to be able to hear that. And I think, I've heard companies that are kind of like, oh yeah, we went and did version 2 because they gave this feedback. No, what they were saying on version 1 was no, you just didn't hear it. But at ZP, if you do have any questions, and sometimes they can be, almost non-technical but more commercial, then don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, thanks very much.